It is time for the third Super Edition, and also the only Super Edition to not have a cat's name in the title, Skyclan's Destiny. In the modern fandom, this is one of the less talked about Super Editions, being neither famous nor infamous, which may have to do with the very root of its concept. As the title suggests, this Super Edition focuses entirely on Skyclan, rather than splitting time with Firestar and Sandstorm's journey like Firestar's quest. It has no notable effect on the main series story, at least in the near future, and contains none of the characters fans have come to love, unless they already read and enjoyed a previous Super Edition. As a result, its appeal from the beginning is limited. But is that wrong? Just how good or bad is the actual story this book contains? Well, it's complicated, but we'll get into that shortly. Skyclan's Destiny was released on August 3rd of 2010, 2 months after Battles of the Clans, 5 months after Fading Echoes, and the same day as the final entry in Ravenpaw's manga trilogy, which is what I'll cover next time. Notably, it's also almost exactly 3 years since Firestar's quest. Thankfully, like that book, Skyclan's Destiny is written by Cherith Baldry, which was a good choice to make sure any of the characterization and quirks Cherith may have added in stayed consistent into this tale. The question now will simply be whether she can make people know and care about an almost brand new cast in the span of one book, and whether the conflicts will resonate even with no other clans around. But first, let's do our allegiances check-in. I'll be comparing the allegiances of Skyclan's Destiny with Firestar's Quest, since it's the only other book so far to show the full cast of modern Skyclan. First of all, as we saw in that book, Skywatcher and Rainfur died, Leafdapple became Leafstar, Sharpclaw was named her deputy and Echosong her medicine cat, Sparrowpelt and Cherrytail were made warriors, and Shortwhisker left Skyclan and became Hutch again. New to this book, the kits Clovertail joined with, Rockkit, Tinykit, and Bouncekit, are all now warriors, Rockshade, Tinycloud, and Bouncefire. Clovertail is still in the nursery though, this time expecting Patchfoot's kits. Petalnose and Rainfur's kits, Sagekit and Mintkit, are now apprentices, Sagepaw and Mintpaw, and Petalnose became a warrior. There are already numerous other changes to the clan. The allegiances list 6 brand new warriors, Waspwhikser, Shrewtooth, Ebonyclaw, Billystorm, Harveymoon, and MacGyver. There are also 2 new apprentices, Snookpaw and Frecklepaw, and 2 new elders, Lycanfur and Tangle. The nursery also has some new cats in it, with a new queen, Fallowfern, and her kits, Rabbitkit, Creekkit, Nettlekit, and Plumkit. Interestingly, it lists her mate here as Hunchfoot, which is not a name that appears anywhere else in the books. This is because her actual mate is Waspwhikser, and this Tom's name was originally Hunchfoot, but it was changed before publishing, and they neglected to change it in this part of the allegiances. This mistake doesn't appear in reprints of the book, but I read the older copies for this series. With all of this combined, Skyclan went from 8 warriors to 13, and from 2 apprentices to 4. The cast size for this book is 57 cats, substantially lower than Firestar's Quest, but about equal to Bluestar's Prophecy. Within that cast, the top 10 cats get 71% of the lines. 46% of the cast are she-cats, and those she-cats get 60% of the total lines. Higher even than Bluestar's Prophecy, thanks, in large part, to having a more equal number of she-cats and toms in their cast overall. With that out of the way, let's get into the story. The prologue shows us some history we haven't seen before, the fate of the old Skyclan once they arrived at the Gorge. They were led by Spiderstar, who wasn't even born when they left the forest, and the deputy, Honeyleaf. By the time we see them, their numbers are already dwindling as all of their cats came back from a battle covered in wounds, and having left 2 of their dead clanmates behind. The clan was ready to break up, with no faith that StarClan was even watching them anymore. Spiderstar and Honeyleaf tried to keep the clan together, but most of the cats ended up breaking off to become loners or kitty pets, with only Spiderstar and the elders staying in the gorge to keep Skyclan's memory alive a little longer. Moving to the present, we enter Leafstar's perspective, where she's having a dream about everyone in her clan being swallowed in a flood one by one. In reality, she checks in on her clan, and Shrewtooth is still very nervous, all the time. Lycanfur joined after a near-death experience. Tangled is ill-tempered but gets along with Lycanfur, and Waspwhikser is an ex-kitty pet who has grown to be one of the most accomplished warriors in the clan. Sharpclaw lets Leafstar know it's about time for the warrior ceremony, but Leafstar wants to wait for the others, and Sharpclaw seems displeased, saying they aren't reliable enough to wait for. Leafstar reluctantly agrees and begins the ceremony for Bouncepaw, Rockpaw, and Tinypaw, the first warriors to have been born in the Gorge. They are given their warrior names, and we get to see several cute interactions with various clan members before the cats they were waiting for arrive. These are the Daylight Warriors, Skyclan cats who still live with and return to their 2 legs at night, but work for their clan during the day, something Sharpclaw and others find to be unfair. Leafstar implemented this change, however, because Skyclan needs more warriors. More cute clan interactions follow, though Sharpclaw still shoots an underhanded comment towards Ebonyclaw, one of the Daylight Warriors. Leafstar reprimands him for this in private, and he apologizes, but maintains that he doesn't like how non-committal their very position is. Later, Leafstar tells some of the young cats stories about the old Skyclan, including their powerful legs used for jumping and climbing. Cats start using this as a way to judge themselves, with thicker legs being a sign of true Skyclan cats. Leafstar tries to steer the conversation away from this and says Skyclan cats can come from many places, but the sentiment doesn't stick with words alone. Spotted Leaf visits Leafstar in her dreams and shows her the history we saw in the prologue, including a final warning that, when the clan finally reformed, they would need deeper roots to survive. She goes to Echosong to discuss this dream and finds she had the very same one. However, they don't address it. Leafstar catches Harvey Moon and MacGyver playing around with moss rather than doing their chores, which allows Sharpclaw to step in and harshly reprimand them. They point out they shouldn't have to clean dens they aren't ever going to sleep in, which adds more fuel to the fire and forces Leafstar to step in, more gently, on Sharpclaw's side. She banishes them from the camp for a moon, so they have time to consider what this life means to them. Later, Sagepaw falls from a cliff and dislocates his leg. Echosong places it back, impressively, and everyone congratulates her. As they're calming down, Patchfoot admits it could have been his fault, since they were teasing him over not being a real Skyclan cat. Realizing how this folds into all that she's been seeing lately, Leafstar calls a meeting to, first, congratulate Echosong, and mainly to declare that they are all Skyclan now, whether or not they have old Skyclan cats among their ancestors. While the meeting is concluding, some strangers arrive. Stick and his group, including Cora and Shorty, and now Cole. They were featured in Firestar's quest during the period where he lost Sandstorm. Now they've come with the goal of learning more about the clans, but they do seem to be hiding something else. Leafstar is hesitant about allowing them to stay, but Sharpclaw jumps in to welcome them instantly. Cole learns some healing from Echosong, while Cora, Stick, and Shorty join Leafstar in a large group training session that consists of capture-the-flag type games. After the session, the cats all banter over the great strategies and moves they used, and even Stick's cats appreciate it, offering to teach them two-leg play skills in return. When the Daylight Warriors go home, though, Stick expresses shock that they'd allow kitty pets who go home to two legs and slop be part of their clan, generating more suspicion from both Leafstar and Sharpclaw about the stranger's intentions. Speaking of that stranger, let's move into Stick's perspective, marking the only time in the series where a Super Edition will be divided between two perspectives. Stick's chapters take place in the two-leg place before they came to Skyclan, and this first one introduces us to Dodge and some of his lackeys, Skipper and Misha, rogues who have been slowly taking over the two-leg place with violence, including an attack on Stick's group that causes a cat called Percy to lose an eye. We also meet Red, Stick's adult daughter, who often wanders off on her own for long periods and is quite independent. Stick is very protective of her. Back in Skyclan, more character interactions are happening, and Stick's group are asking more and more about clan skills. We also learn that Stick's group is used to eating rats, and they learn the history that Skyclan has with rats as their enemy. Stick suggests hunting all the rats left behind from the battle, and Leafstar calls a meeting with everyone who was there at the battle with the rats to discuss it. Stick asks if he can come to this meeting, and Sharpclaw instantly says yes, once again preemptively overruling Leafstar's judgment. Stick proposes a plan to hunt all of the rats, and Sharpclaw asks him to train them in the lead up to the attack. Leafstar discusses her insecurities over her leadership abilities and Sharpclaw's lack of respect for her with Echosong, who does her best to comfort her and agrees with her stance that the rats are dangerous. Training under Stick continues with a makeshift model of the rat pile he built in the center of camp, and many Skyclan cats are getting caught up in the excitement. Reluctantly, after several days, Leafstar leads her clan in another battle against the rats, leaving the Daylight Warriors out of this fight since the battle was taking place too early, before they would arrive. Sharpclaw didn't include them in practices in the days leading up to the battle anyway. They actually win, and only Waspwhikser comes out with significant injuries. Echosong treats everyone as the Daylight Warriors return, sad at the fact that they weren't even told about this battle, when they could have joined if they had known ahead of time it was happening. Sharpclaw steps in with Leafstar to say the two-leg place cats fought well, and heavily suggests that they should be invited into Skyclan, already giving them the clan's official thanks without Leafstar's approval. In another Stick chapter, they find Red, who seems distant and unhappy with her father's coddling of her. It comes up again that Stick worries about her because her mother is gone, but Cole assures Stick that he and Red are both fine. Misha and Skipper then try to get Stick to kill a two-leg rabbit, and when he refuses, they do it themselves, messily, and frame Stick for it by making him come over to put the rabbit out of its misery. Cutting back to Leafstar again, the rats are defeated, but they sent it a loner who seemed to go in and out of their territory. Stick's loners are fully integrated into Skyclan life, and Frecklepaw has been helping out Echosong. The medicine cat brings up the idea of making Frecklepaw her apprentice. Leafstar isn't sure if a medicine cat would be allowed to live with two legs part of the time, but she agrees to think about it for the time being. Billystorm tells Leafstar that he's seen Stick's group leading patrols of Skyclan warriors into the two-leg place, and Sharpclaw was with them. Leafstar has not heard about this, but doesn't want to distrust her deputy, so she just keeps it in mind for later. Leafstar holds the gathering, going over all of the news that has come up in the past moon. In Skyclan, these gatherings are also used for any cat who wants to come forward with questions, problems, or suggestions they want to pose to the whole group. After the gathering, Sharpclaw and Echosong get into an outright argument over whether or not Stick's group or the Daylight Warriors have more or any merit, which only makes Leafstar feel worse. Life continues like this for a while. Snookpaw is injured and goes home to the two-leg place. Billystorm invites Leafstar to join him in the two-leg place because of how tumultuous life at Skyclan is, but she says no. Leafstar hunts with Cora, her closest friend among Stick's group, but can't glean from her any information on their intentions. And then Sharpclaw approaches with the request for all of Stick's group to be made warriors. Leafstar holds their ceremony despite several interruptions from them as well as Harveymoon, and the clan breaks out into another argument over whether or not Stick's loners or the Daylight Warriors hold more or any value to Skyclan. Leafstar wonders if, in accordance with her dream, she is creating roots or just bringing in another storm. In her dream that night, she meets Spotted Leaf, Cloudstar, and numerous characters from Blue Star's Prophecy, now available in stores near you, along with Skywatcher. They just hang out for a while. No prophecies or anything. Tensions are still high between the two sides of the clan, as Leafstar agrees to go with Billystorm to help Snookpaw get out of his two-leg nest after being shut in for multiple days. Snookpaw shows them around his house, but he still isn't allowed out, and they have to flee early as his two legs get home. A patrol also met the loner who wandered on their territory, and he had the thick legs of a Skyclan descendant, but when Leafstar speaks with him, it turns out he doesn't want to join. We cut back to Stick after all of this, who is in hot water for the framed murder of the two-legs rabbit. In the midst of this, Red becomes angry over Stick's overprotective nature and runs away. He later finds her with her secret mate, Harley, one of Dodge's friends. Red didn't tell her father what Harley knew, that a two-leg attack would be coming towards them, and with these two things combined, Stick disowns her as a daughter and nearly attacks her before Harley blocks the strike. Stick says she belongs to Harley now and runs back to his friends just in time to hear Percy was captured by two legs. Skyclan, meanwhile, is living out normal life. On a recommendation from Echosong, Leafstar goes out hunting with Shrewtooth to help him come out of his shell and feel more respected in the clan. And after he panics upon approaching the two-leg place, he finally reveals that he was abused by the same two-leg as Petalnose. He ends up bonding with her over this, and it is very nice to see. However, Sharpclaw overhears and decides they need to attack this two-leg, as it is clearly an enemy of Skyclan. The clan jumps on this idea after what the two-leg did to their clanmates, but the loners from Stick's group cut in to say that fighting a two-leg isn't possible and is extremely dangerous. After more protests, though, Stick admits it would be possible to frighten a two-leg. The next morning, Sharpclaw wakes Leafstar and tells her to have the attack go on that morning because of the weather, even though the Daylight Warriors were prepared to come on the following morning instead. Working together, their patrol does succeed at scaring the two-leg and its dog, and they return victorious. But, once again, the Daylight Warriors feel left out, which causes Sharpclaw and the other full clan warriors to jump on them for not committing to clan life. Leafstar steps in to end the argument and sends the cats on patrols, making sure not to combine Daylight and full warriors. Echosong pulls her aside to ask if it would be better to address this directly, which Leafstar agrees to. However, she doesn't know how to address this when both sides are, in some ways, correct, and the root cause seems to be her own decision to invent Daylight Warriors in the first place. She admits to Echosong her own insecurities over her place as leader, and Echosong promises she is meant to be leader, but to maybe be wary of how her feelings might be guiding her subconsciously? This is the worst possible time to mention that a couple of the cute scenes I have to skip over involved Leafstar appreciating Billystorm and playing with kits with him. You know, when she isn't appreciating Echosong or Cora instead with as much or more vigor. We cut to the past again, where Stick's group are ready to declare war on the two legs, but Stick redirects their anger to Dodge. He also lies about where Red is until they later force it out of him. This is where we learn that his former mate, Velvet, actually refused to live with him rather than dying, as she chose to remain a kitty pet, which Stick took personally. They beat up a random cat, assumed to be in Dodge's gang, for information, and Stick almost kills her before his cats stop him. This is 2 Stick chapters in a row of him almost killing someone in a rage, by the way. Shorty says they need to ask Velvet for help to win against Dodge. In Skyclan again, Snookpaw is back, and with the tension still high, Billystorm tells Leafstar it's not her fault, and that maybe all of them will have to choose one world or the other soon. When asked what he would choose, he makes a sudden love confession to Leafstar, which she instantly reciprocates without even thinking. I do not understand these two being a couple in this book. That loner who turned down Skyclan earlier came back and says he wants to join now. His name is Egg, and he refuses to get a new name, but is apprenticed to Sharpclaw, who tried to take over his training as soon as he got to camp. Echo Song asks for Frecklepaw as an apprentice, again, and Leafstar suggests maybe the new kits could make for an apprentice, but all of them are very adamant about being warriors. During training, Egg turns out to be extremely scared of foxes. Sharpclaw assures them that the fox left, which causes Egg to explain that he joined the clan because Sharpclaw said they were the only ones who could keep him safe from that fox. Leafstar decides to have a word with her deputy in private. Sharpclaw says he never really lied, and even if he did, it was justified because Egg has the perfect physique for a Skyclan cat. He walks away without apologizing. Echo Song is having trouble managing all her duties on her own, and Leafstar offers to send Shrewtooth to help, which causes a bitter Echo Song to bring up Frecklepaw as the obvious cat to help her. She then asks about Leafstar's relationship with Billystorm, since the whole clan is gossiping about them obviously being mates. I cannot understand how the clan so clearly picked up on what even Leafstar doesn't know. She doesn't even think about Billystorm when he's not right in front of her or being mentioned by someone else. Anyway, Echo Song tells her not to get too close since it could read as favoritism for the Daylight Warriors in the overall clan divide. Plus, gee, wouldn't it be difficult trying to be a mom with kits and being a leader for a tumultuous new clan? So Echo Song tells her to walk the path of Skyclan's leader alone. I do not blame Echo Song for this because it's a sentiment expressed by nearly everyone across decades of Warriors history, but I don't like that this is their attitude at all. I discussed this issue more in the Blue Star's Prophecy video, though, and I will bring it up again when we get to the Skyclan comics. Billystorm asks Leafstar to come and stay in the Two-Leg place again, and she says no, again, because she needs to be there for her clanmates here. Billystorm says he's her clanmate too, fundamentally missing the point, and then brings up Sharpclaw's relationship with Stick again as some sort of reason for her to not care about any of her full-time clanmates. Just to be clear, Leafstar as Skyclan's leader should stay with her clan to protect them and give orders if need be. Especially since she doesn't trust her deputy right now. She has a right to say no to Billystorm, particularly because neither of them have said they are mates yet, only that they'd like to be. Anyway, Leafstar instead gets mad at Billystorm for accusing Sharpclaw and Stick at all, and Billystorm accuses her of not wanting to get close to him because he's a kitty pet. All of this is illogical. Leafstar has a dream of Cloudstar wandering with his clanmates trying to find a new home, and once again bringing up the Stronger Roots prophecy from earlier. Leafstar concludes she is one of the Roots, and she must abandon Billystorm for the good of the clan, and shortly after, Echo Song comments that Leafstar is making the right choice. What the heck is happening? Oh, and in the middle of this, a Two-Leg kit broke her leg falling off Skyclan's cliff. Leafstar acts like a kitty pet to comfort them, while Echo Song analyzes the injury, and the clan teams up, especially the Daylight Warriors, to reunite the Two-Leg kit with her family. To bring the clan together, and to honor Snookpaw's particular work in saving the Two-Leg, Leafstar names him Snookthorn, but just after the ceremony, he says he'd like to leave. He likes the Two-Legs too much and didn't like how they treated him when they thought he was a wildcat. Sharpclaw gets angry with him for completing the ceremony if he wanted to leave, and more cats join in quietly, but Leafstar wishes him well and Snookthorn leaves amicably. Sharpclaw takes this as a sign that they need to re-examine the loyalty of all Daylight Warriors, calling out Billystorm in particular. Leafstar shoots back that he clearly must doubt the warrior code if he thinks it's so easy for their clanmates to reject, and turns away without letting him continue. Leafstar later spots Sharpclaw, Stick, and his group taking a patrol of Skyclan warriors out of camp. As Billystorm said, they were going to the Two-Leg place to learn about the area, and Stick and Sharpclaw have been organizing these patrols for a while, without telling Leafstar. Obviously, this is incredibly disrespectful, so after quickly making up with Billystorm, Leafstar confronts them, and Sharpclaw says that she's been too busy, which is an absurd excuse. This is Leafstar's entire job, and she has the free time to spend on helping and sitting in with individual clanmates on a day-to-day basis. The only thing taking up more of her time than usual was the clan arguments between the Daylight and full-time warriors that Sharpclaw himself led most of the time. There is no excuse for what Sharpclaw did here in not telling her. As we learn in a second, he didn't even know what Stick wanted to use them for. If Sharpclaw just thought Stick's skills were useful, he should have told Leafstar and asked permission. If he thought Egg should join the clan, he should have told Leafstar, given Egg honest reasons to join, and accepted his decision if he chose not to join. The irony in him, as Echo Song suggests, considering her biased because of Billystorm, is that Sharpclaw is the leader of the anti-Daylight Warrior movement, and Leafstar is actually one of the most neutral forces in the clan, having sided with both arguments at different points. Leafstar rightfully shoots back at Sharpclaw that she needed to know about these patrols, and Sharpclaw then moves to say that Stick had useful knowledge about the Two-Leg Place, and he just wanted to make use of that knowledge. He frames this as normal deputy duties, upholding the warrior code by making himself, and a few warriors each night, stronger, but only by going behind the leader's back to organize patrols outside of their territory in secret to train in skills Leafstar doesn't think they'll need to use. Leafstar also points out how he has never offered this training to Daylight Warriors, and Sharpclaw uses this as an excuse to mock them again. Cora then breaks in to order that Stick finally admit to why they came, and that they need help. Back to Stick's past for the last time, he meets with Velvet, who isn't happy to see him and only agrees to talk because it's about Red. He tries to get close to her again and she shuts him down. When he explains Dodge's group took Red, by her falling in love with one of them and Stick herself driving her away, and that she's clearly planning an attack on them now, Velvet shoots back that Red wouldn't do that being in love doesn't change who you are, and encourages him to talk to his daughter rather than attack her, lest he lose her permanently. Velvet refuses to help herself, quite happy with her housefolk. Shorty points out that she might have joined if she knew it was a matter of their lives being in danger, but Stick doesn't want to show her their weakness, so he instead leads them to those cats that he knew were forming a group over in the gorge. There are enough of them, and they have battle training. They can fight Dodge's group. And that would take us back to the beginning of the book. In the present, Stick pleads with Leafstar to help them, something he really should have done much earlier if he wanted to actually get cats out of imminent danger, and Leafstar requests time to consider it, considering the aggravated state she's in. She talks to Skywatcher in her dreams, who says that Stick and his group have been loyal to their clan, despite tricking them. I would say teaming up with the deputy to sneak warriors out behind the leader's back each night counts as disloyalty, actually. And an old cat named Swallowflight comes in to be the angry, obvious straw man. Echo Song also gets a sign that there is a far-off battle, and that if Skyclan doesn't act, it will come to them. With the decision made for her by StarClan, Leafstar sets off with a patrol to take down Dodge's group. Billystorm apologizes for being unfair to her before she leaves, something Sharpclaw has still never done. And after a quick journey, Skyclan arrives and gears up to drive out Dodge's group, pausing every 5 minutes to let the Two-Leg Place cats know that they won't disobey the warrior code while doing this, meaning no killing Dodge, no forcing scared cats to fight on their side, and, mid-battle, not killing the kits of a terrified queen. Misha takes one of Leafstar's lives, and while she's in StarClan, Spotted Leaf and Cloudstar come to tell her that she should stop doubting Sharpclaw, because he is loyal to her and to Skyclan. This is insane. I'll get to that in a moment. But Skyclan wins the day for Stick's group. Stick rages one last time at Red for her willful choice, and he kills her when she tries to defend her boyfriend. Stick then scorns Harley's grief for her, as she is dying, and moves to kill Dodge when he tries to defend Harley too. Sharpclaw steps in to stop this. Stick argues once more of her murder being the only way to end everything. Skyclan breaks up the conflict, and they go home. Leafstar tells Sharpclaw she is leader, dutiful to her clan, and she won't tolerate disloyalty from her deputy. And he says he never expected anything else, and he only challenged her to make sure she was doing the right thing. Because Skyclan needed to believe in her, and for that, she needed to have faith in herself. Yeah, you know what totally helps with that? Not telling your leader about most of your plans, going behind her back, making public decisions for her, and starting an inter-clan conflict over who is or is not allowed in her clan. Leafstar buys this argument entirely, but tells him with finality that the Daylight Warriors are staying. Skyclan is allowed to be different from the other clans. Sharpclaw says he's proud to be her deputy, and then Leafstar turns to talk to Billystorm, presumably to ask him to be her mate. Then, for the first time, we get a short manga at the end of the Super Edition, something that will become a trend for a while. This one covers Rabbitkit, now Rabbitpaw, having trouble learning to climb trees due to a fear of heights, but ultimately saving Leafstar in the Two-Leg Place. The new medicine cat Frecklewish checks on Leafstar's injury, and as a reward, the apprentices are made warriors: Nettlesplash, Creekfeather, Plumwillow, and Rabbit Leap. While this manga is a very cute add-on and I'm happy to have it, it doesn't have to do with the rest of the story, so I'll spend my discussion time on the remainder of the book. Because boy is there a lot to talk about. I have very mixed feelings on this book, because some parts of it are incredible and unique, and some are disgusting and represent the worst things Warriors sometimes is. So that we can end on some higher notes, and because it came most recently, let's start with the negative. The root of the problem is, in my opinion, Stick's entire role in the story. I hope it came across from the summary, but Stick is not a good cat. His ex-wife wants to keep her distance from him, his daughter has been fed up with him for a while, he lies to the members of his group, and they constantly have to rein him in to stop him from doing things he'll regret, and he is prone to vengeful, targeted anger where he refuses to accept reality and instead implants his own, where Red is still his fragile daughter who must have been stolen, even when every single cat around him says otherwise. This is what leads him to killing Red, showing no remorse and trying to kill more cats afterwards. Dodge, Misha, and the others trying to starve his group or frame Stick for murder is of course not okay, but that doesn't make Stick a hero, and him being such a morally corrupt character not only makes reading his chapters uncomfortable at times, but makes his role in Leafstar's chapters much worse, as we now know that this manipulative, vengeful cat, who is determined to paint himself as the only victim, is bringing his cats to her clan and leaving Percy and Red behind, in danger, for weeks or months as he tries to manipulate Skyclan into fighting his battle for him. I do not like this cat! And all of this loops in badly with Sharpclaw's intended arc here, which is meant to be, based on the narrative framing, that he is a loyal deputy who wants to challenge Leafstar so that she can make the best decisions and display her confidence in standing her ground against him. However, the only reason I know this was intended is because StarClan tells her directly that she has no need to doubt him and needs to work together with him, sends her both a dream and a sign to say that they need to support Stick, and in doing so, validating Sharpclaw's planning with him, and never sends word against Sharpclaw, either through Leafstar or Echo Song. In fact, Echo Song 2 is used to validate that Leafstar's behavior is what's at fault, between not acting on the original prophecy dream, not immediately stepping in to break up the clan conflicts, and apparently demonstrating bias by having any feelings towards Billystorm. Sharpclaw's actions throughout the story, consistently stepping in front of Leafstar or going behind her back to do things himself without consulting his leader, are not the actions of someone who is trying to challenge their leader for their own benefit. You cannot grow if you don't even know about the experiences going on around you. You cannot claim to be loyal to your leader if you undermine your leader's authority and make official decisions for the entire clan in front of her and behind her back when you know she disagrees with you. If Sharpclaw believed his actions were better for the clan at large and believed Leafstar wouldn't see it that way, like some other protagonists throughout the series, he could claim to be loyal to the clan, but not to his leader in those moments. However, Sharpclaw never provides a good explanation for any of this, because the reasons he gives, sometimes multiple at once, like, I didn't lie, but if I did it would be justified, or you were just too busy, are completely inapplicable to the events that actually happened in the story, and mostly come across as further lying or manipulation. He still never once apologizes, and instead Leafstar comes out of her StarClan dream at the end ready to instantly forgive him after she goes through her character growth and stands more firmly in her decisions. If Sharpclaw was helping a victim behind Leafstar's back because she was too caught up in her own clan's conflict to also help cats outside of her clan, there might have been some level of nuance. But Stick's conflict is nothing but gray, considering his own moral corruption, and Sharpclaw did not even know that Stick was trying to use them when he agreed to take patrols out of camp, at night, in secret, just so they could learn some cool two-leg plays techniques. Just in case, you know? By the end of the book, Sharpclaw and Stick have become the main plotline, and it is not one that comes off well. However, they are not the only plot, or even the part that makes up the majority of the page time. If I had to come up with an overall plot, it would actually be the divide between full-time clan cats and daylight warriors, and Leafstar's feelings of responsibility for it due to it being her idea, with her insecurities preventing her from solving the problem. And, for the most part, I think this is a really well done plot, in large part because it funnels naturally through the main character. Leafstar is a unique leader among those we have seen, heavily interested in the happenings of her clan and taking part in training and chores when she doesn't have to for the sake of making herself a part of the clan, and showing she's willing to work with them. She additionally has an instinct to do everything herself and to think about or overthink decisions carefully, to make sure she doesn't put off a bad impression in this brand new clan. News travels fast in Skyclan, and while she tries to confidently do what she believes to be right, she is also constantly aware of others' changing opinions on her and the clan they're forming, and can become defensive when she or her clan are questioned. She is constantly under a microscope in a brand new society that has no support from other similar groups around her, and she's ever aware of what a responsibility that is. As a result, though Daylight Warriors were her idea and she believes in them, she wavers on fully supporting their side so she doesn't lose rapport with half of her clan. This isn't to say she did nothing. She makes consistent attempts to step into individual, small group, and full clan settings and explain to her clan why these disparities between them shouldn't matter. But each side of the clan further separates from her and each other, becoming more convinced by their ideals in the process. This leads to Leafstar being isolated from her clan, even though she puts so much time into it, getting to the point where Echosong and Sharpclaw, each firmly on one side of the argument, distance themselves from her too. This is a compelling and understandable conflict, especially because each side does make explicit why they believe themselves to be correct. The new Daylight Warriors were allowed into Skyclan but are still being treated as lesser for dividing their time, when the reason they do so is because they have more people they care about than clan cats. Meanwhile, most of the full Skyclan cats are ones who had to abandon their previous lives, in this generation, in order to reform this clan. And they don't find it fair that newer cats are being given the option to keep their old lives when they didn't. My one problem with this conflict is its ending, because it gets swallowed up by Stick's story and funneled through Sharpclaw's conclusion, and to a lesser extent, Billystorm's. They become stand-ins for the clan at large, and Leafstar's firm acceptance of Daylight Warriors and declaration that Skyclan doesn't have to be like the other four clans, to Sharpclaw and Sharpclaw alone, is the only resolution this plot gets. I like Leafstar's speech there. I think she's absolutely right to make Skyclan different, and it is a good way to show her growing confidence, as she doesn't feel as shackled to what Firestar taught her. However, when they get home, they'll still have to deal with the rest of the clan, and that isn't covered here. Even putting aside both pieces of the plot, this book is actually overflowing with fantastic character beats, beautiful characterization to make brand new characters likable, and new and creative interpretations of clan culture. Everything from Ebonyclaw's utter determination to fit into the clan without throwing away or being ashamed of her kitty pet nature, to Sagepaw actually trying to be given tick duty so he could finish Tangle's story, Petalnose's unique position of suffering as she mentors her son and sees him injured, and Shrewtooth's bonding over the horrible treatment they received from the same two-leg, Echosong's strong desire to find an apprentice and her unwanted focus on Tinycloud until she finds Frecklepaw, Snookthorn's care for the relationship he has with Two Legs, Stick's offhand comment that cats aren't supposed to be awake all day and clan cats are weird for doing that, the uniquely complex and skillful strategies used for battle training, games, and the battle with the rats, and even a little side plot where, after most key plot beats, the kids play out a version of those events in a roleplay-like way, lightening the mood while also showcasing their changing values and perspectives on the clan as they pick up on the opinions of their parents and other warriors. There are so many heartwarming things to find in this story, and it would be easy for Skyclan to become a favorite, or in my case second favorite, clan after all that was shown here. And this is what the majority of the page time is spent on. Not on Stick's entire story, not Sharpclaw's manipulations, but just Skyclan being themselves. And this part of the book is something I deeply treasure. As I said before, my feelings on this book are definitely mixed, as the overall content of the book contains some of my favorite examples of rich clan culture and character writing, as well as some of my least favorite tropes in the morality and plots of Sharpclaw, Stick, and, to an extent, Billystorm as well. I have more things to love about this book than I do to hate about it, but the things I don't like become so prominent by the end that it leaves me with a sour taste. Hopefully though, in this longer than I was anticipating video, you've been able to gauge why. And of course, none of this will be impacting the series at large for a long time. So when I come back, I'll instead be picking up with Ravenpaw one last time to show how he and Barley deal with the Blood Clan cats in their barn, when we get to the next episode of our trip through time.